Hi, I'm Lori Jones, President and CEO of Avocet Communications and host of the Integrate and Ignite Marketing Podcast. Join me and my guests, some of the world's top innovators, disruptors, and visionaries as we explore bold and brave marketing strategies for scaling and growing your brand. This week, I sit down with the incredible Christine Heckart, CEO of Xapa. Christine has an amazing story to share about finding success in a market she initially knew nothing about. Christine is here to tell us all about her unexpected journey from retiring to launching an innovative idea and to give us her valuable advice on understanding your particular market, your competitors, and the ecosystem you're working in. Learn about the importance of strategic thinking, curiosity, and courage in marketing, creating a strong brand promise that resonates with your audience, and her take on the challenges faced by new companies trying to solve unsolved problems. It's a whirlwind of knowledge and inspiration. So grab your headphones and get ready to ignite your marketing strategy with Christine Heckart on the Integrate and Ignite Marketing Podcast. Welcome to the Integrate and Ignite podcast. I'm so excited to have Christine Heckart join us today. Welcome to the show.
Thank you. I'm very excited to be here.
You are such a whiz when it comes to so many things, marketing, leadership. We're going to talk a lot about category development today and design and all those sort of things that go into building a great position in the market. Before we get there, tell us a little bit more about your background because, oh my gosh, lady, it is impressive.
Well, I don't know about that. Everything is very relative and there are way more impressive people, but I have spent 30 years in tech and I have been at very big companies and very small companies. I've been in almost every facet of the tech market and every business model you can imagine. I've been a CMO many times over, lots of new product development, a CEO, a founder. So I've seen it from a lot of different angles over a long period of time.
Yeah. And that builds over time a lot of wisdom. And we're really excited today to have you share some of that wisdom with us. Before we get into the nuts and bolts of this, if you were telling yourself 30 years ago, from everything that you know today, what advice would you have for yourself 30 years ago?
For myself or as it relates to category creation?
For yourself.
Oh, wow. That's a tough one. I guess to be a little less caught up in all of it. I mean, a little more relaxed.
Right.
I tend to be a driver and I take stuff too seriously. I take myself, I take situations, I take everything too seriously. And I really admire people who are, just have that sense of humor and are able to maybe enjoy more. I'm always having fun and I feel like I have grace under fire, but there's still an anxiety in me. And to shed some of that sooner would have been probably better for my overall health, mental and physical health.
There is that, which is
pretty. My whole new company now is entirely about well-being, mental and physical health, and making that interesting and fun and personal and professional development. So obviously, it came to fruition, and that I decided to do something about it. But if I would have started that earlier, it would have been way better.
Yeah, well, you and I both. I appreciate that. And for those younger people listening today, this is sound, sage advice.
Yeah,
so it's important.
Self-care, self-awareness, self-trust, self-control, all of that,
Yeah.
Much sooner.
Tell us more about Xapa and what you're up to there. And then we're going to talk about ultimately how you came to developing this great category that you're going to be launching soon.
Yeah, thank you. So Xapa starts with the recognition that success in life and business is about so much more than money. It really is about wholeness and well-being, mentally and physically and socially and, all the facets of your life. And if you're really lucky in business, as you move up through the organization, you get great leadership training and coaching, and you learn the hard way. I learned the hard way about a lot of this stuff, but man, you really need it when you enter the workforce and in your 30s and early 40s as you're climbing. And so we are creating a game with an embedded on-demand app that really puts a coach and a mentor at your fingertips, makes it fun to learn self-care and self-awareness and self-trust and confidence, and what are your saboteurs, and how do you communicate more effectively and create relationships and manage time. Just anything you can think of that is about personal and professional development, we're putting into tiny short quests that are fun to do every day.
I think that's great. And years and years and years ago, we launched a big campaign in the state of Colorado. The goal was to reduce DUI related fatalities on Colorado's highways. And I remember a colonel in Colorado Department of Safety mentioning that it takes 21 days to form a habit.
Yes.
And so these daily things
Right.
that you do are exactly what it takes to form a habit, so
Yep.
that 33 years later, you can't reflect and say the anxiety is something I wish I would have done differently.
Right. No, exactly. And once you are habit forming, so like we do streaks and stuff like that, but one of the key habits we want people to form is just like set an intention at the beginning of the day and be grateful for something at the end of the day and write that
Nice.
down.
Right.
And we'll timeline it for you so you have your little gratitude journal. But just there's so much wisdom in the world. We talk about like just packaging and delivering the world's wisdom, these things
Mhm.
that I wish I would have known and done sooner,
Right.
and trying to make that available. I think, young people today are very, very mature. They have much higher EQs, but they want to self-actualize much sooner in their life. They don't want to wait until they're 60 or 70 to self-actualize. They want to do it
Right.
sooner. And we want to help them do
Probably
it.
because they see all of us around them not doing it as soon
Right.
as we should have,
Right. I mean, they're very purpose focused and
Mhm.
values. So we help people discover their purpose, get aligned to it, figure out their values and their strengths, use those more. It's just a different way of being in the world. But then also, how do you send ripples of positivity out in the world? How do you help others? How do you not just build a better me, but build a better world?
That's great. So you've had all this self-reflection, and the idea comes to you that there's an incredible need. Tell us about that aha moment, that moment in time where you said, okay, I've got it. I'm going to travel down this path.
I was CEO of my previous company, which was a data analytics company, and we were bought. We weren't looking to sell, but we got an offer we couldn't refuse, and we took it, and it was all good for everybody. And I thought I was going to retire for a year. It was the end of 2020, early 21. And even if I would have retired, I couldn't have done anything because it was still,
We're
COVID
all kind of
lockdown.
locked in.
Yeah. But I had this, like I said, I had this idea. It's been brewing for a long time. One thing that I've realized is my own purpose is about helping others totally fulfill their own purpose, find it and
That's
fulfill
nice.
it. And, how do we each become the best version of ourselves? I feel best when I'm around people who feel that way and who help others, and we all help each other and the world gets better. And so we just said, what if we could do this at scale, use technology for good, take the same loops that are used to form habits in the gaming, first person shooter games and TikTok and all these entertainment spaces, and it doesn't end up being time well spent. It's just time spent. It
Mm.
takes a lot of your time, but you're not necessarily feeling better about yourself after it.
Ah,
And the world isn't necessarily better after it. And what if we could use those same mechanisms, but really put them towards a good purpose in people's own life? So
that's
after they
great.
spent 10, 15, 20 minutes a day doing something, they are better. Like they're leveling up, not just in a game, but they're leveling up their life skills.
Mm. I might be putting down solitaire at night.
That would be awesome. We just want 10 minutes a day. And like you
Yeah,
say, you can not just form a new habit, you can really, we see amazing effectiveness in change for people, that they really, they start communicating more clearly. Their spouses notice a difference. Their coworkers notice a difference. And that's when the aha is like, oh, this is really working because
right.
people are noticing.
How did you fund the company early on? Was it self-funded? Did you go after investors? And where are you in that stage now?
Both. I was only going to fund it. I didn't want anybody else's money. And I had a whole bunch of people wrestle me out of that notion. And their argument was, if you only put your own money up, you don't care about losing it and you won't work that hard. And if you take any of our money, we know that you will, go to the ends of the earth to not lose our money. And they were 100% right in that. I would have quit this thing 1,000 times over, because it's hard to do.
Wow.
But so I did take money from initially friends and family, some investors that made money in my last company. But now we've raised 5 million all through friends and family, and we're just starting to raise our A round. So we're going to
That's
need,
great.
we're going to need some real money now.
Yeah, I think it's absolutely amazing. One of the gifts that you provide anyone that you work for, the investors that believe so much in you, and now this company that you're building, so this audience that will really, really be affected by this wisdom, is category development. And there's a lot of confusion about category design, category development, category creation, category strategy, just all these different things. Where does it all fit together? And is there like an overarching look at, categorically how you should, take or stair step this whole process?
Yep. I'm sure there are lots and lots of frameworks. There's books you can read. There's lots of ways to approach this. And there's honestly not a right or wrong. This is a combination of art and science. And every situation is completely unique and different. So just because something worked for another company does not mean it will work this time. Even myself, I mean, I've created new categories that created or modified at most of the companies I've been at in my career. And then I was a consultant for 8 years helping other people do that. And no two situations are identical. So the place to start is really kind of internal first. Like the idea of creating or modifying or shaping a category is you want to shape it in your likeness and after your image. Ultimately, you want the buyer to use your criteria, buying criteria that advantage you. And if they think this way about the buying criteria, this is what's most important in my decision to purchase or to do, like if it's a nonprofit or, whatever. But these are the most important criteria to consider when I make this decision. You want them to pick criteria that you are advantaged in,
Right.
that you have the best answer for. And so you're trying to shape both hearts and minds, beliefs, behaviors. You have to win hearts before you win minds. Especially even in enterprise, people think decisions are made logically. There's a list of criteria, how do you do on this list of criteria? People think it's very objective and logical, and on the surface it is. But 98% of all decisions are emotional, even in business.
Oh,
I do
absolutely.
business with who I like.
Right.
I like your company's story. I like your company's sales representative.
The way it makes me feel.
The way it makes
Right.
me feel. Exactly. So you really have to, you have to reach into people's hearts. And you also have to connect logically. There has to be both. If they want it in their heart, but they can't make a logical argument, it's going to be way harder. But if there's a logical argument and their heart's not in it, you still don't get the sale. But, ultimately, as the designer, say, of the go-to-market strategy, you're thinking about, who do I want my competitors to be? Because ultimately, category creation is just positioning.
Right.
Who do I want to be positioned against because I'm advantaged? and because maybe there's already budget there, and or maybe because people are already in a habit to do something. Like all of these considerations, you have to think about, how do you get yourself and your option into the consideration set in front of and in the consideration set of the buyer, such that they will choose you.
Yeah.
You can pick an existing category and just differentiate. It's better to be different. Be different, not better.
No matter what,
Right, be
please.
different,
Yeah.
not just better. To say
Yeah.
I'm better than, it falls short, but I'm different. I'm a different solution. And if you want this, and this is important, I'm the best at that. And it requires really knowing what you're best at. I call it your essence, but what is the one thing that you are better at than anybody else in the world? It might be a combination of things that you can't get anywhere else. It might just be a 10x on one particular criteria, but within a category, whatever category you pick, what's the thing that you're really best at? And then you can go into an existing category because there's already budget, there's already buyers, there's already competitors, and you can really differentiate. You can modify, you can say, hey, this is a category, phones, but my phone is a smartphone. I'm going to modify the category.
Right.
And so I already know what a phone does. I don't have to educate people from the ground up. All I have to do is educate on the modifier. Or you can create a whole new category. That's the hardest to do.
And probably the most expensive.
It can be. There's lots of sort of ways to create categories from whole cloth. Sometimes they just happen, frankly. There's what I call small c and capital C category creation. Capital C is you're looking for somebody else to buy in and create it for you. Or at least with you. Small c is you don't care what anybody else does or think. You're creating your category because it's the best way to describe what you are and what you do. And if other people come along, great.
Now, would you consider Uber a big C or a small C?
Oh, that's a great question. So I would say Uber started out as a small C. They didn't start out to say, hey, I don't know. I don't follow them early. But I don't think they spent a lot of time and energy early to say, we are going to convince an analyst somewhere and reporters and so forth that this is a big important category. I think they started out small C, and mostly I start out small C's too. Let's define the market the way we want to. Just start using the language. There's a whole new category called rideshare. We're that. This is why you need it, what you do. And if other people start coming along for the ride, that's awesome. We're not going to convince them. We don't care if they do, but we need it to describe ourselves. And then if analysts and reporters and so forth pick it up, all the better. And then it goes from small C to now there is an official category.
Right.
So you're a big C when somebody's doing a market report on you and there's competition in the space and you can buy, a Gartner or Forrester report on it or whatever. So when you start small C, you ultimately, you're successful when you move into big C, but you don't need to start with big C and convincing everybody else. You can just start doing what you're doing.
It's interesting. I had a live webinar on LinkedIn last year, and it was called Your Product Won't Sell Itself. And one of the things in my research for this webinar that I really wanted to understand was why most companies fail. And they mostly fail. Certainly they run out of money. And this is, startup to Series A, B sort of trajectory.
Okay.
But most of them don't do the due diligence from a research standpoint, industry research, jobs to be done, competitive analysis, customer interviews, all these sort of things to ultimately set the product up or solution so that you can get to a good understanding of where you can position it. Provide us your POV on that statement and really what entrepreneurs today need to be taken into consideration when it comes to this sort of thing.
Yeah, well, it's a great point you make. It's a very good question. I haven't thought about it in quite that way before. First of all, let's just stand back and say any company at any size and at any point in their life cycle can proactively, or and sometimes it ends up happening reactively, can end up wanting and needing to think about category.
Right.
And and positioning itself is always, whether it's, category is just sort of a bigger look at positioning, but you're always thinking about your positioning. If we think only about very young companies, the startups and
Right.
the early entrepreneurial phases of, it can be of a whole company. It can also, frankly, be of a new product inside a big company.
Absolutely.
Right. So,
IBM and Watson. I mean,
right.
look at where we are today with that.
Yeah. And again, one of the things that comes back to is if you're doing something that is sort of brand new and hasn't quite been, if you're just following a pattern, like there's already a market underway, and you are trying to play catch up, you're a fast follower or a slow follower, whatever, then all you have to do is copy what's out there. So yes, you need to research and all of that, but it's pretty apparent. And maybe you're looking to differentiate, maybe you're not, maybe you're just looking to get into the game. Okay, fine. But a lot of new companies get started because they're trying to solve a problem that isn't being well solved yet.
Right.
Or they're trying to hit an intersection of things where, there's great solutions in 1, 2, 3 elements, but there's nothing that brings it together in a holistic way. Or they break things apart. If you go back to what kind of created the early surge in the tech industry, it was a company like Microsoft, Bill, taking a monolithic system, a mainframe, and saying, I'm just going to offer just the operating system. And we're going to break these big things apart, and we're going to start, okay, you can buy the database separate from the operating system. So, and these are pendulums that swing. Sometimes you're bringing things together. The iPhone brought 3 things together. Sometimes you're taking things apart. Sometimes you're just going for white. I'm going for some white space that kind of doesn't, it's everywhere, but nobody kind of solves the problem holistically the way I want to try to solve it. So when you're doing that, everything you say is 100% correct. You have to do research. You have to understand what's out there. But 3 things make that really hard. When you're a young company, you don't have manpower, people to go, spend a ton of time or money on this research. So you have to do some, but you don't have a lot. You also have to get something going. Secondly, there's probably nothing that looks exactly like what you want it to look like. I can look out into the gaming industry, and I can look into the app industry, and I can look into the personal development, and I can look into the professional development, but there's nobody bringing those things together in the way I want to bring them together. So what do I look at? I can look at each of them, but I can't copy anything because this has been what's hard for us the last year. We've had to invent a whole new formula, and it's really difficult. But then also everything's moving so fast. So I can do all the research in the world. And I did a ton of research 2 years ago when I started. Well, 3 months later, that's different. And 6 months later, that's different. And a year later, generative comes along. And so, in a perfect world, when you start a company, you have unlimited time, unlimited resource, unlimited money, and you can really do things perfectly. And you hope that all of the laws of physics that impact every other company aren't going to impact you.
Right.
But that's not the world we live in.
No.
Like, all of these laws of physics impact all of us. And so there's no such thing as creating the perfect company or the perfect solution or the perfect, let's start out and really know what we're going to do, because the minute the real world interferes, everything changes anyway.
Yeah, it really does. Where does Xapa fit? Is it a cross section of, simply differentiating with an existing category, or where do you feel you fit at this stage?
I'm wrestling with that now. The first thing I have to do is build the darn thing, and it has to be an amazing experience. And we're getting really, really close to that. We're not there yet, but we're getting really close. And, we'll probably put it in in a place that people can get to it and start testing it between now and end of year. And hopefully by early next year, anybody can get on Xapa, and it's Xapa. But, wrestling from the very beginning, I've wrestled with this category issue, and I don't have an answer yet. And I don't have to have an answer yet. So that's
You
the good
don't.
news for me.
Right.
But it's not an app because it's a 3D world. It's a
Right.
full-on game. It works like a game. There's a game engine, but there's an embedded app in it, because a game, you have to follow exactly what, like you get on something like Duolingo, which is not a game, or, you get on a real game, Minecraft or whatever. There's a certain sequence you have to go in. You have to do this before you could do that. If you have to wait 12 hours before you can, you plant the seeds and you get the apples that you can take to, exchange for what you want. There's a sequencing in a game. And that's good. We have a game, but we also want on demand. You come in and I need to know right now how to have a difficult conversation. I need to know right now how to show up in a certain leadership way. Like I need some inspiration right now as a leader, or
coaching, behavioral health. I mean, all these things.
Right. I'm dealing with somebody and their saboteur is coming out, and I need to understand what is that saboteur and how do I deal with that? Or my own saboteur is coming out. I recognize it. So that has to be on demand. There's nothing that has both of those. So we don't know, we're sitting here talking about category. It's very timely for me because I'm wrestling with it too. But one thing to keep in mind is categories can emerge and kind of unfold. And we always say we're an instrument of that which seeks to emerge. That's sort of one of our sayings inside Xapa.
I love that.
So sometimes you have to be really curious about what you are doing and how the world is reacting to it and where it fits. And instead of trying to force something, you have to be curious and allow it to unfold, and then make the best of what you got. Now, other times, believe me, I'm a forcer, I'm a driver. I will, there's the market, and I'm now going to shape that market.
You just know it.
Right. In my likeness, after I'm going to create a market out of whole cloth, and I'm going to ask people to believe certain things. And then I start doing that. And that's okay too. I'm not sure which of those camps, but I wait for some things to unfold as long as I can before I then go into that point of view mode where now I'm trying to create a point of view for the market.
Yeah, I love it. And a lot of this research that you've got coming up is going to, provide some great insight. Total sidebar, funny question for you. Have you ever named your saboteur?
Well, I haven't picked a name for my own saboteur, but we teach that there are certain archetypal saboteurs. And we work with an amazing company called ChangeCast, and they have a way to think about and name each of these saboteurs, recognize it in you, understand why it's there, the good that it provides. Like all of these saboteurs are there for protection for us, ultimately to, kind of defend and protect us.
Right.
So they're good. They play a positive role. They drive us, they protect us, but then they can also, sometimes when they're on stage, they're disrupting. Right. Play on stage, and you have to be able to recognize them again in yourself and others. You must have a name for yours.
I do. His name is Dick. And
That's awesome.
No, and so my saboteur, enters, stage left at moments of weakness, and basically is telling me I can't do it. And and here I am fighting against him and believing that I can. So I found that naming him, first of all, it's humorous and I get a kick out of it. And everyone that loves me does as well and knows me well, knows, how he fits into my life. But it really does help me, get out of it more quickly, get out of that mode when I'm feeling that, emotional weakness about, walking out on stage or getting ready for a podcast that I might be nervous about, whatever it is. And it has been very, very effective for me.
That is awesome. I love that. We may have to borrow that. So you're dealing with a saboteur, but there's also automatic negative thoughts or tendencies.
Yeah.
Right. So everybody has certain ants that tend to show up in their head. So you're also starting to lean into ants a little bit there. And then there's our own self-talk, self-narrative. And this is part of self-care.
Absolutely. Right.
And so one of the things that a lot of, now we're kind of going into Xapa world here, but people don't realize is, one, you need at least a 3-to-1 positivity ratio minimum, and ideally more like 6 or more to 1 with important people in your life, including yourself. So for every negative thought, there needs to be 5, 6 more positive thoughts, but you can also flip thoughts. When a negative thought comes in, just immediately recognize it, stop it, challenge it. Is that even true? Do I have any evidence for that?
That's
And
great.
just state the opposite. And
Right.
it's amazing if you can, again, back to habit, if you can just habit form that, then you will find your life becomes very different. Your frame, like, how do you reframe things? All of these are skills: positivity, reframing, happiness, dealing with saboteurs. These are all skills that can be taught, practiced, and learned.
Yeah, I love it. Talk to us about the importance of marketing in general when it comes to launching a brand. Well, actually, let's back up. Developing the brand. And you talk about essence, which is really an important piece. You don't understand really what essence is unless you've got that framework down of where you and the insights on where you're going to position the brand, because it's all a proactive response to what the behavior changes that we want to be able to make. But talk to us about the importance of all that and what you've done as a CMO, as a CEO, as a founder regarding the, placing an importance on marketing in your own organization.
Oh, great question. Huge topic. So I'm going to rattle off some things very, very quickly, and then we can decide where to dive. First of all, I'm a huge believer in markets, not just marketing. So like as a CMO, I'm part of a group called Empowered CMO. And one of the things we say is be a chief market officer, not a chief marketing or a chief ing officer. So you need to really, you were talking about earlier, really understand your market, your buyer, your competitors, all of the ecosystem, like really get the market. I also grew up in new product development. So as much as I am a chief market officer, I believe in a great product. Marketing should never say something untrue about the product. It should be completely authentic to what the product or the service or whatever does. But if you don't have a great product, putting lipstick on a pig after the fact is not effective.
Not going to work.
Right. So it really starts upstream, right? A
It
product
does.
might not sell itself, but marketing can't sell a bad product. You got to have both. And really great products for some period of time can and should sell themselves. And then marketing is about getting in the consideration set, educating people. You don't want marketing to become, and I hate it when marketing is used as sort of a derogatory word. Oh, that was just marketing. Like it's not true. Marketing should always be 100% authentic. Never say something about your product that is not true. If it's a bug, turn it into a feature. The beginning part of any product or marketing should be the essence. Like, what is the one thing that you are better at than anybody in the world? And if you don't know that, then stop all the buses until you figure that out. Like truly, what are you either today or tomorrow better at than anybody else? And the thing that you'll defend to the death, because that's what you build the market, the category, the positioning, the messaging, the everything around. That's your differentiation. Is your brand that, or is there a larger brand promise? Like with Xapa right now, we say our brand promise is to help everyone everywhere get filthy enriched. Money
like
can't
that.
buy happiness. Life is about way more than money, but enrichment, all the things. So our brand promise is we help you get filthy enriched.
I love that.
Well, what is that goes down to the essence of what we do better than anybody in the world. We believe we make it fun and fast to be enriched in every possible part of your life, personally and professionally. You got to understand that. And then what are the behaviors you want from people? What are the behaviors they have today? What are the behaviors you want? The ing in marketing, which everybody, kind of immediately goes to the ing and they think about branding in some way, advertising, whether that's on social media, digitally, or more traditionally, that's important. I don't want to say that's unimportant, but there I would say be highly, highly differentiated.
Right.
I've used cartoon campaigns in the past in an enterprise.
Brand characters. Yeah.
Right. The characters, like, be different, be provocative, be bold. The minute you look like everybody else, like you're a tech company and so you're blue, and you're professional looking, and I mean, that's just boring and nobody cares. You've got to be provocative. You've got to be willing to get people to lean in and disagree or be curious. And if you're not willing, if you don't have the courage to do that, you're not really marketing.
No, you're not. But I also think it takes a very, very insightful CMO and sales lead to understand that differentiation. We've got a tool that we refer to as range of acceptability. And within any given industry, there is a range of acceptability about how far you can push the marketing imagery, the messaging, the delivery mechanism, whatever it might be. And we literally call that from boring to brave, a 1 to 10 scale. And what we do is we analyze in our competitive analysis where the competition sits. And quite often we know that the same old is a 1, 2, 3, 4, because that's where engineering is dictating, product development's dictating, the CTO's dictating to marketing what they need to be doing. And you can't differentiate. You're not taking a bold approach. So guess what? The ing, no matter what it is not going to work.
Yep. So 100% accurate.
It takes bravery in marketing to make that work, to get to the range of that acceptability.
Right. 100% agree with you. And it's often the CEO, frankly, who fears being different, being, ridiculed. So, if you're a CMO, thinking about and understanding that range just within your CEO is important. That I love. I've never heard that before, but I love that range on the high end about, where you can.
Bravery. Yeah.
Right. That bravery.
Bold.
It's probably 2x what you think it is. Like that range of acceptability. You don't ever want to be like mean-spirited, but whether you're inspiring or you're challenging and being provocative, whatever that is, the limit is probably higher than you realize. And you want people leaning in and paying attention to what you have to say. And you have to have bravery and courage in order to do that. Because the minute you look like everybody else, it's comfortable. Everybody's comfortable with it. But it's a waste of money and time.
Well, think about it this way. I mean, this is really the explanation point to it all, right? When you and I got into this business in the late 80s, the average person needed to interact with a brand 7 times before making a buying decision. That is 26 today.
Yep.
And with that huge increase in numbers, without differentiation, without being bold and brave, again, within the acceptance of what an audience for that industry would allow, with, not being crazy outside of it just to stop people, it's still got to be relative.
Yep.
That is that's the importance of this. I love it when we pick up a new piece of business and we do a competitive analysis and we find out that the competition is as boring as it could be, because that is just opportunity for the client and for our ROI that we hope to achieve with them.
And then the other side of all of this, everything you say, 100% agree with. I put exclamation points behind it. And so much of marketing, because of those 26 points, it's about delivering real value. It's about educating. It's about helping, this shaping beliefs and behaviors. That's education. That's content. That's, people, those 26 touches are to help them get smarter. They're coming to you. You become a trusted advisor. Whether they buy from you or not, they learn to trust you. They will advocate for you, maybe even long before they're a customer. Yeah. And people kind of forget that marketing now, there is no marketing without content marketing.
I agree. There are a lot of empty promises in marketing. And you never know which came first, the CMO or the CEO or the sales team saying no, right? There's just a lot of marketing that is not working either because of what you've said. It's an empty promise. It's not factual. So, the experience once you buy it, you've got immediate buyer's remorse because you were oversold. I mean, dozens of different reasons why. But that is a good reason to ultimately be authentic, which you can receive with the content marketing, whether or not it's utilizing your customer's voice as a part of that, or thought leaders, subject matter experts as a part of it. It all dovetails with what it needs to be, again, which ties back to the essence that you talked about earlier.
Well, and that authenticity, this is where sometimes companies end up making promises or claims that aren't true because they're trying to fit into a set of buying criteria that their product is not well suited for. And this is where that authenticity does come in, shape the market in your image after your likeness, like understand what you are really great at and make people want that.
Right.
And they don't have to make false
claims. Change the narrative.
Change the narrative, change the category, change the definition of the category, create a new category, modify the existing category. It doesn't matter, within an existing category, help people understand there's a different set of buying criteria.
Right.
But if you're really doing that, you're being authentic to your own product, you're making claims that are true. You're educating people about a different way to think and behave. And that's really good marketing. That's what you want to do.
Yeah, that's when we have lots of high fives and celebratory clinking going on. I want to go back to something you mentioned earlier, and I think it's a really important point. Marketing does get a bad rap quite often. Sometimes it's, we deserve it. Sometimes we don't. But along with that, CMOs are fighting an upward battle right now for a seat at the board table, to be considered truly a part of the C-suite, and enter AI and the mindset that, everything that they ask for in building an internal team or an external team, we can just use ChatGPT for that now. And that's an exaggeration, but nonetheless, there's that mindset out there.
A lot of people are thinking that's going to be true, and it will be true in many, many places.
It will, unless the CMO continues to create value around the position of market versus marketing and the science behind getting there. Right. But it takes shaping the C-suite, sales, CTO, product development, the CEO, the CFO, all of them to truly be believers in what marketing can accomplish to get there. Right. What advice do you have for CMOs walking that?
Well, you gave a lot of great advice right there. So I'd keep listening to you. That's one piece of advice. I 100% agree with what you said. It starts with market. It's be a chief market officer, because what generative will be able to do for us is all of the tactical stuff. It'll do it anywhere from, say, 50 to 150% better than a human. Writing copy, right?
Exactly.
It can write a lot of copy. Now, can it write truly unique copy that really like mixes words, get filthy enriched for Xapa? I don't think any generative system anywhere could have come up with get filthy enriched. Those three words
agree.
Have never been used together before anywhere on the internet. That took the brilliance of Tim Oden, who is a brand marketer from, back in the heyday of brand marketing, took that human brilliance to come up with that. But can generative write a bunch of good copy around it? Absolutely. Yeah. Can generative allow us to go from 10 segments and 10 types of customization to 100 or 1,000 or 1,000,000 or 10 billion? Yeah, it probably can. What generative can't do is white space. It can't do what it can do. And that's but a lot of marketers can't do that. And this is why the really good executives, the reason why marketers are often not at the table is we don't have high quality talent in the position.
Mhm.
High quality talent in the position is a strategist. It's somebody who can drive business strategy. What's the essence of this company? What's the market that we want to go after? How do we want to shape that market? What kind of product and features and capabilities do we need to differentiate? That's what a good marketer does.
Right.
And then, by the way, they can be bold and creative behind the scenes in an advertising campaign and a messaging and positioning campaign that will make people understand. They'll be able to do the analytics. Marketing is
Adopt.
so big and broad, like no one person can do it all. So they better be a great leader that's a great strategist and can build a team of experts. It's a big, hefty job now, but it's not just the ing anymore. And the
Right.
reason why CMOs lose their place at the table is they get too focused on the ing and not on the market.
I had a discussion last week with someone who's a brilliant CMO, and we were reflecting on a lot of younger, like VP level marketing folks. And the first thing they do when they get hired is change the brand because they are more comfortable with the branding than they are the strategy that leads into all of that. And that is another area that I think a lot of CEOs get frustrated with. The first thing that they're going to want to do is change the brand, change the logo, change the essence. That's not even low hanging fruit. It's easy. It's all that is known.
Right.
What you're bringing to the table is the importance of strategy, which we did a CMO survey on strategy and the need for it 18 months ago, released all the data all over the place. About 30% of CMOs felt they had strategy nailed, that they did not need to outsource the support for it or anything. 70% felt absolutely we need help getting this done, but it also places an importance on it. A lot of those CMOs weren't in a position that they could place importance on strategy because it was dictated from the top. And that's not, that's creating a constant churn of the position as well because of the dictates.
Right. Yeah. Again, back to every situation is so unique. You need to understand what kind of marketer you are. Some people are great with ing, and there's a place for it. If you are great with ing, and by that I mean a really good strategy needs to be in place with a strong strategist to drive it. But what the company needs for growth, like all we're trying to do is create growth, right? So what the company needs for growth is translating that strategy into something that will be inspiring, compelling, motivating for people to buy.
Right.
So ing is really needed, and it's very, very valuable in that situation. And if you're that kind of chief market officer, then you're heavy on the ing, then find a company where the strategy isn't the problem, and it's not going to be the problem for a while. The product isn't not going to be a problem for a while. All they need is that acceleration. Fabulous.
Right.
If you're going into a company where the CEO isn't the strategist, or they think they are, but the strategy isn't working, the product isn't where it needs to be, the positioning isn't right, strategy has to be done, or where the situation is changing very rapidly. So the strategy you have today might not be the right tomorrow. Then either you better be the strategist and you better be able to play a very significant role in aligning people, figuring it out, getting everybody behind it, or that's not your job. You go somewhere else. And unfortunately, you get mixes of teams, I'll just say, whoever's doing what, where there aren't people to play the key roles. There aren't people to play the ing role, to play the strategy role, to understand the market, to understand the product and the differentiation and the competition. If people, somebody isn't good at each of those, then you'll do the wrong things as a company. And then companies kind of go the wrong way. And we've all been there. We've all seen it.
Well, and I think it takes a very special insight to be able to recognize what is going to be best for you as a marketer to succeed with any company, and even go through the process of filtering. It's a two-way interview, right? Filtering that CEO or that CTO or the chief revenue officer and asking the appropriate questions to really determine the importance they place on it, on strategy, if in fact it is where it needs to be. And if not, if you're going to have the opportunity to change it. And
Right.
if not, move on.
Well, and, things right now, especially, are moving so fast with generative. In a lot of spaces, generative is going to change the landscape dramatically. In other spaces, it's not going to impact it much at all, at least not for a while. But in
Right.
some cases, it's going to impact it a lot. Does the company even realize? One of my past experiences, I walked in, I was CEO. The company had been up and to the right, and it had a category. All we needed was the ing. We just needed to put a little fuel on the fire. And it turned out, and we figured this out, unfortunately, within like 2 to 3 months of me, a bunch of stuff had changed in the market, and it had changed 12, 18 months ago, but nobody had noticed because
Wow.
the changes were subtle for a while. But all of a sudden, it felt like overnight, the market zigged and we had zagged, and what we had built was no longer appropriate for the market we were in.
Wow.
What we ended up doing is a complete reassessment. We went back to what is our essence? What is this company better at than anybody? We found a thing that it was better at than anybody. We started to create a whole new category around it. There were only, I don't know, less than 100 companies in the world that needed that thing, but the companies that needed it really needed it. And we were the ones that could do it. So you can take, a bag of stinky lemons and you can turn them into something delicious. You can mix it, in a margarita and make a nice little cocktail, but you've got to really have an understanding of what you do, your essence, what you're better at than everybody, and how that fits into an existing market, or you got to start creating a modified or new category.
Now, do you think, because of your marketing background as CEO in that position, that you were able to lead the team down the zag or the zig that you needed to do strictly because of the strategy that you understand when it comes to marketing? Because you were at that moment in time a real gift to that company. Had there been a non-marketing CEO, that could have been catastrophic.
Well, somebody else in the job might have done it differently, and frankly, might have ended up doing it better. So, we don't know if I was a gift or a detriment or what, but we did make it through successfully. We did have a very good outcome. And so maybe somebody could have done it better, but we didn't fail. I would say that whether it was because I was in marketing, what we needed at the time was a good strategist and somebody who really understood product and product market fit. Now, I knew nothing about that market, by the way. That was part of the problem. So I had to figure that out. You have to be good at asking questions and listening and synthesizing and making sure you got the right experts. So that's just basic leadership.
Right.
And so, if we go back to just market, a CMO, the role of marketing, what's needed in each case might be quite different. But if you want to be a world-class marketer at any level, then you have to have a combination of skills, and probably those skills have to do with strategy,
right,
alignment, curiosity, probably some technical prowess, like at least really understanding the product and the market,
right.
and then having courage. You can't be a marketer without courage. Those two things just can't go together.
I tell you, Christine, we are 50 minutes into this conversation today, and we could have talked a lot longer. We barely got to our talk track, which I absolutely love, because there was so much sage advice that you shared with us today, so much wisdom, so many nuggets that I know our listeners are taking copious notes on, and will probably want to be able to follow up with you and ask you about them. Is the best way to get a hold of you through LinkedIn, or is there another channel?
Well, I'm at Xtine, Xtine at Xapa.com. I'm also on LinkedIn. But frankly, Lori, you're an expert too. And so, they can call you and get as good as
that's nice.
they can me.
Thank
But we
you.
should continue the conversation at some point.
I tell you, we will. I am so excited for you. I'm going to be cheering you on. I am so excited to watch you and see where this company grows and goes. And I really appreciate you showing up today with such a heart of information and a wisdom share. Again, I think I've said that 3 or 4 times throughout the interview. It has been incredible. Thank you so much for your time and your appearance on the Integrate and Ignite podcast.
This episode is complete. Head over to avocetcommunications.com for more ways to scale and grow your business. And be sure to tune in regularly for insights and motivation with host Lori Jones and her guests on the Integrate and Ignite Marketing Podcast.